I'm an earthling, an inhabitant of a civilized world. The old man's voice is weak and raspy. He is Seo Yunhyun, a man who has lived a long and difficult life in a world not his own. A young girl named Mina peers into his dilapidated hut, her face etched with concern. "Oh no, old man Seo," she exclaims, holding out a bowl of steaming buns that her mother sent for him. Seo Yunhyun accepts the food with a weak "thank you." Mina encourages him to get well soon, reminding him that the villagers are waiting for him to make his special soap again. The girl then departs, her small figure trudging through the vast, cold expanse of snow, leaving Seo Yunhyun alone in his quiet misery. As he lies in his sickbed, Seo Yunhyun's mind drifts back. 50 years, he coughs. It's been 50 years since I fell into this damned world. His long and painful story begins to unfold. He remembers that day clearly. He was driving his coworkers, including Director Kim, on a company workshop trip. Everyone else was panicking, but a young Seo Yunhyun remained calm at the wheel. Suddenly, their vehicle was engulfed by a catastrophic landslide. The world turned to chaos, and in the blink of an eye, they woke up in a strange, new world. This new world was a place of myth and terror, home to fantastical beasts like a giant, three-tailed fox and a ferocious two-headed snake. It was also a world of wonders, where powerful, godlike beings who looked like cultivators could soar through the skies. Seo Yunhyun immediately recognized the setting. They had fallen into the world of Xiangxia novels, the very kind he used to read back on Earth. Despite the terrifying situation, he had a strange sense of confidence. He believed his coworkers, who seemed to possess hidden talents, would thrive here. Everyone, that is, except for him. He felt a sense of dread, believing he was the only ordinary one among them. His intuition proved correct. The sage-like beings who descended from the heavens were amazed by the mythical talents his coworkers possessed. One by one, his colleagues were chosen and whisked away into the sky by a magnificent dragon, destined for a greater purpose. In the end, only Director Kim and Seo Yunhyun remained, abandoned in this strange and unfamiliar land. For a while, they clung to the hope that something special would happen to them as well, that they too had some hidden power waiting to be discovered. But that hope was quickly extinguished. The harsh reality was that they were just ordinary people with no special abilities whatsoever. With no knowledge of this new world and no special skills to rely on, the only thing they could do to survive was grueling manual labor. 6 months later, Director Kim reached his breaking point. He used all his money to buy a third-rate martial arts book, determined to change his fate. To Seo Yunhyun's surprise, Director Kim showed incredible aptitude. Within 3 months, he mastered the techniques and became a full-fledged martial artist. He quickly grew in power, learning more advanced techniques, and eventually left the mundane world behind to venture into the Jianghu, the world of cultivators. And just like that, Director Kim was gone, leaving Seo Yunhyun completely and utterly alone. Even then, a small, desperate part of him wondered, could something special happen to him as well? But his hands, worn and bloodied from years of toil, were a testament to the bitter truth. He had tried studying and working, but until the very end, nothing special ever happened to him. And so the memory fades, returning us to the present. After 50 years of surviving through sheer effort alone, Seo Yunhyun is now just an old man, wasting away from a common cold. Coughing up blood, Seo Yunhyun whispers his final words, a testament to his origins. He was from Earth, and for 50 long years, he had tried his very hardest to live. He remembers the sheer effort it took. He learned the foreign language and how to write. With his own 2 hands, he worked to make a living, eventually saving enough to buy a small plot of land and build his own house. He even found a measure of success. Using his knowledge from Earth, he began to make soap using lye. In this world equivalent to medieval China, soap was a revolutionary new concept. For a time, he prospered, selling his unique product in the market. However, even that small happiness was stolen from him. Thieves copied his recipe, and their hired thugs brutally forced him out of the market he had built. And so, he finds himself back where he started. Alone in his cold, desolate hut, refused by the world and simply waiting for death to claim him. As his life ebbs away, he's haunted by a single, desperate question. What did you want me to do? He grits his teeth in agony and regret. He had tried his best, so what more could he have possibly done? The most painful thought returns to him, a question that has tormented him for 50 years. Why couldn't he have been selected? Why was he deemed not special? A single tear escapes his eye as his strength fails him. Why did he have to suffer a life where everything was continuously taken away from him? He no longer has the energy to even keep his eyes open. With his final breath, he makes a wish. If I just had a bit more power, maybe I might have had more opportunities. Opportunities. That was his last thought, and that was how he died. But death was not the end. A brilliant flash of light pierces the darkness. Seo Yunhyun gasps, a sharp intake of breath from lungs that should have been still. He looks down at his hands, at his body. He's young, he's alive, and he's wearing the same clothes he wore on that fateful day he first arrived here. His head throbs as he looks around. His coworkers are scattered on the grass, all of them just as disoriented. Where are we? One of them asks. As the fog of confusion lifts, a profound realization dawns on Seo Yunhyun's face. He finally understands. He didn't come to this world without any powers after all. Looking upon the scene of their arrival, the same scene from 50 years ago, he knew. He had gained the power of regression. This marks the beginning of a new chapter, a new life. His first regression. One of his colleagues, his memory still fresh, pieces it together. It's the first day we fell into this strange world. They all start to recall the sequence of events. Being in the SUV, the sudden landslide, and the blinding flash of light. For Seo Yunhyun, however, the details are hazy. After all, he's trying to remember events from 50 years ago. He is suddenly addressed by his old title, "Hey, Manager Seo." He ponders his next move. In all the regression stories he'd read, the protagonist abuses their knowledge of the future. But for him, after 50 years of manual labor, the only secret knowledge he has is how to make soap. His thoughts are violently interrupted as his aggressive boss, Section Chief Jeon Myung-hoon, grabs him by the collar, roaring his full name. Manager Seo Eunhyun. Before Seo can even process the situation, Jeon Myung-hoon's fist is already flying towards his face, his expression twisted in pure rage. His coworkers can only watch in stunned silence as the confrontation escalates. "You fucking idiot," Jeon Myung-hoon snarls, looming over Seo Yunhyun. He accuses him of dozing off while driving on the mountainside, claiming he almost got them all killed. Seo Yunhyun is lost in thought. He had almost forgotten this moment. It has been so long since anyone called him by his old title that he barely recognized it was him being yelled at. Jeon Myung-hoon continues his tirade, threatening Seo's job. But this time, something is different. A cold thought crystallizes in Seo Yunhyun's mind. Yeah, Section Chief Jeon Myung-hoon is a son of a bitch. He remembers exactly who Jeon is. The nephew of a managing director at their company. A lucky bastard who became a section chief at 32 purely through nepotism. Another colleague, Chief O, tries to intervene, telling the section chief to stop. But Jeon is livid, screaming that Seo was dozing off in this critical situation. Seo Yunhyun slowly gets to his feet. "Yeah, I definitely dozed off," he admits calmly, "but the reason I did was because you handed your work over to me." Jeon Myung-hoon, a memory flashes in his mind. Him, exhausted, forced to stay up late at the office to finish Jeon's work. His eyes narrow, his voice laced with a cold fury he hasn't felt in decades. "Moreover, weren't you supposed to be in charge of driving?" As Jeon continues to rave like a madman, the fragmented memories from 50 years ago begin to connect, painting a vivid picture of a lifetime of suffering. He remembers this exact moment in his past life. He was so shocked and terrified back then that he instinctively bowed his head and apologized, believing he was the one at fault. That single, misplaced apology set the tone for the next 50 years of his life. He spent decades apologizing, even when a group of bandits trampled over him and stole all of his belongings. He apologized when a martial artist mocked him for no reason, and he apologized when a corrupt regional official taxed him into oblivion. His life became a cycle of bowing and begging for forgiveness. But after years of bottling up his anger and frustration, he had realized something. He learned that while you have to hold your tongue in front of those you can't handle, his hand clenches into a tight fist. But he rises to his full height, his gaze steady and unwavering. Section Chief Jian, he says, his tone devoid of the fear it once held. I know you're mad, Seo continues, his voice calm and even. But now's not the time to be pointing fingers. Jian Myung-hoon is stunned by this unexpected defiance, his face contorting with rage. What, you damn son of a bitch. Are you asking for a fight? He screams, swinging wildly at Seo Yoonhyun. In that instant, the lesson he learned over a lifetime of pain rings clear in his mind. I don't need to kneel down to someone I can handle. With a speed and precision born from 50 years of survival, Seo Yoonhyun easily dodges the sloppy punch and counters with a devastating blow of his own, sending Jian sprawling to the ground. As he stands over his former boss, he thinks back to his past life. He had been beaten up by martial artists countless times, learning the brutal rhythm of violence through his own pain. He lands another solid punch, the impact echoing the injustices of his past. He remembers every beating he suffered. By bandits while gathering herbs, by starving villagers during a famine, and by officials for taxes he couldn't pay. These weren't just moments of pain, they were brutal lessons carved into his very being. And now he puts those lessons into practice. Each punch that lands on Jian Myung-hoon isn't just an act of vengeance. It's a demonstration of the cruel, efficient knowledge he was forced to acquire to survive. His colleagues, who have only known a world of civility, watch in absolute horror. They cannot comprehend what they are seeing, but Seo Yoonhyun knows. In that brutal world he was forced to endure, he gained something they all lack. He gained a deep, intimate understanding of violence. He learned its cruel lessons, like how a punch to the eye can amplify a person's fear tenfold. With blood on his knuckles, he knows the inevitable outcome. After being beaten so thoroughly, there are only two words that will instinctively leave his opponent's mouth. And he is right. The arrogant, abusive section chief is now a broken man, whimpering the very words Seo was forced to repeat his entire life. I'm sorry. Looking down at the sniveling wreck he has created, Seo Yoonhyun reflects. He may not have the mythical talents of his chosen colleagues or the genius for martial arts that would make him famous, but he does have one thing. A power forged in the crucible of a 50-year-long nightmare. He has the ability to change his own fate. Continuing from the previous chapter, the scene opens in a verdant field where Seo Yoonhyun, now referred to as Manager Seo, stands over a kneeling section chief Jian, who is clutching his head in pain. The surrounding colleagues are shocked, with one shouting, "Manager Seo, how could you do that to your own colleague?" Seo Yoonhyun turns away, letting out a sigh. He calmly admits, "You're right," and explains his actions by saying, "I just got so angry there." I'm sorry if you were all shocked. His apology seems measured and lacks genuine remorse. However, his inner thoughts reveal a cold detachment. He thinks, I won't see these people again until I die anyway. He then publicly apologizes for the accident as well, since he was the one driving, further cementing his facade of responsibility. Director Kim steps in to mediate. He tells Seo Yoonhyun that while Section Chief Jian was being harsh, his reaction was an overreaction. He then instructs him to apologize directly. Seo Yoonhyun readily agrees with Director Kim, but his internal monologue reveals his true intentions. He thinks to himself that unlike the others, he will continue to see Director Kim, hinting at a future connection only he is aware of. Drawing on his knowledge from his past life, Seo Yoonhyun knows that Director Kim is destined to become one of the most powerful martial artists. He strategizes that by supporting the director now, he'll reap benefits in the future. With a determined glint in his glowing red eye, Seo Yoonhyun concludes that his best course of action is to get on Director Kim's good side immediately. Putting his plan into action, Seo Yoonhyun turns to Section Chief Jian and extends his hand, offering a formal apology for his unwarranted reaction. Section Chief Jian, still on the ground and bleeding from his nose, looks up with a furious expression, about to curse at Seo Yoonhyun. Seo Yoonhyun, however, maintains a placid and unbothered expression, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the anger directed at him. His composure is unsettling. Seeing Seo Yoonhyun's apology, Section Chief Jian swallows his anger and remains silent, averting his gaze. With the conflict temporarily resolved, Director Kim changes the subject, suggesting that they should try to get out of the woods and search for a village. Seo Yoonhyun agrees, thinking to himself that it is indeed the logical course of action for anyone in their situation. As Director Kim points towards the distance, Seo Yoonhyun knows better. He internally reflects that in this new world, common sense has no place. His mind flashes with images from his past life in this world. A chaotic realm where immortals fly through lightning-filled skies and battle giant monstrous centipedes to secure their immortality. He recalls that this land, the world of Murim, is governed by a single, brutal rule. The strong devour the weak. It is a place where people fight with swords for wealth and honor. As his colleagues walk along a path near a waterfall, he reveals a crucial piece of information. The forest they are in is called the Ascension Path. Looking out at the vast, wild landscape of mountains and waterfalls, Seo Yoonhyun knows with certainty that there is no village, city, or nation to be found anywhere nearby. Seeing the sun begin to set, Director Kim turns to Seo Yoonhyun and pragmatically suggests they find a safe place to set up a shelter for the night. Director Kim thoughtfully considers his own suggestion and agrees that finding shelter is the right move. Suddenly, someone asks about the car, remembering all the supplies they had packed for their workshop trip. The panel shows a flashback to the trunk filled with food, water, and camping gear. Seo Yoonhyun knows it's a pointless endeavor. He thinks that it's a shame, but they'll never find the car. He also correctly predicts that they won't believe him if he tells them the truth. Deciding it's better to let them waste their energy than to argue, Seo Yoonhyun proposes a plan to split up, manipulating the group for his own purposes. He suggests that one team can search for a shelter, while the other looks for the car, proposing that they all regroup before it gets completely dark. As the sun dips lower behind the mountains, the urgency to find safety for the night becomes clear. As dusk settles into night, the search presumably concludes. The scene shifts to a small campfire burning in the darkness, indicating that at least a temporary shelter has been established, setting the stage for the group's first night in this strange new world. Later that night, the group sits around a crackling campfire that Seo Yoonhyun built. The mood is somber and confused, with one of the women voicing everyone's thoughts. "I don't get it," she continues, trying to piece things together. "We were in a landslide while we were in a car, so how did we end up here while the car is gone?" The others can only agree in their confusion. However, the mood lightens as they start eating the chestnuts Seo Yoonhyun had gathered, with one person exclaiming in delight. Seo Yoonhyun looks on with a slight smile, confirming they're crunchy and telling his colleagues to have as much as they want since he gathered a lot. Director Kim laughs, praising manager Seo. He remarks that despite the serious situation, they're having fun thanks to him, and notes that he always knew Seo was a diligent and dependable employee. He also shows some concern, remembering that Seo Yoonhyun seemed tired while driving because he had to work late the previous day. In the background, Seo can be seen resting. Another female colleague chimes in, agreeing with the director and praising their manager for being so diligent. The women chat amongst themselves, with one remarking that it feels like they're just camping, thanks to the cave that Seo Yoonhyun found for them. Seo Yoonhyun dismisses the praise, saying he was just lucky. But he knows the truth. In his past life, they had wandered the woods for hours before finding this same cave. As one of his colleagues tells him to just accept the compliment, the camera pans to the rough cave wall, highlighting their precarious shelter. Seo Yoonhyun decides to enjoy the fleeting moment of peace. However, a dark premonition fills his mind as he thinks, tonight will be the last moment. We can laugh like this. His ominous thought hangs in the air as a large, bright moon shines in the night sky, casting an eerie blue light over the dark clouds. Suddenly, Seo Yoonhyun's eyes snap open in terror, sweat beading on his face. Drawing on his memories, he immediately drops into a low bow, stammering, I offer my greetings to the Lord of the Forest." A massive dark fox with glowing red eyes looms over the bowing Seo Yoonhyun. The creature speaks, its voice laced with ancient power. Noting that he has a unique scent for a human it has never encountered before. One of the female colleagues, roused from her sleep, rubs her eyes and dazedly asks what manager Seo is doing. Her drowsiness vanishes in an instant, replaced by pure terror. She and the other colleagues begin to scream as they finally see the monstrous fox standing before them. Seo Yunhyun frantically shouts at his panicking colleagues, ordering them to show manners to the Lord of the Forest and to get on their knees immediately. The great beast, now revealed to be a white fox, snarls, showing its sharp teeth. It speaks with disdain, saying that every time it meets humans, it's reminded of how foolish and rude they are, and that it would normally rip off all their limbs. However, the fox leans down towards the still bowing Seo Yunhyun. It declares that since one of them seems to know the proper way to treat it, it will forgive their transgression this time. But this mercy comes at a price. The fox informs the terrified group that they must pay a price for being in its territory. It demands an arm from one of them in exchange for being allowed to stay. Seo Yunhyun trembles, a horrifying memory surfacing. In his past life, everyone had reacted just as his colleagues were now, screaming and panicking at the sight of the monster. The memory culminates in a gruesome image. The bloody corpses of his entire group, slaughtered because their panic had angered the fox. Back in the present, the fox licks its lips, seemingly pleased by Seo Yunhyun's respectful manners. It then poses the terrifying question again. Now who will give me their arm? It adds that it's a better deal than last time, when it took all their limbs. Seo Yunhyun's eyes gleam with a red, determined light. He understands the new terms perfectly. This time, the sacrifice is much smaller. Not all of their limbs, but just one person's arm. It's a cost he's willing to consider. His mind works quickly, weighing the horrible options. His knowledge of the future provides a key insight that no one else has. Even a lost arm can be healed by the powerful cultivators who are set to appear in this very forest in just 2 days. He reveals the final piece of his plan. His foresight allowed him to be prepared. He says, "Plus, I've already prepared an herb that'll reduce the pain." Stealing his resolve, Seo Yunhyun rolls up his sleeve and presents his arm to the monstrous fox, declaring, I will offer my arms." His colleagues, including Director Kim and Section Chief Jian, can only stare in utter shock and disbelief at his decision. The fox praises his manners and, as a reward, promises to make the amputation as painless as possible before lunging forward with its massive, gaping maw. A horrifying scream tears through the forest as blood splatters everywhere. The fox violently rips Seo Yunhyun's arm from its socket. The beast then tilts its head back, swallowing the severed limb whole in a gruesome display of power. The other colleagues cringe and turn away, unable to watch the bloody spectacle. Racked with agony, Seo Yunhyun fights through the pain, his one remaining hand reaching desperately for the pain-reducing herb he had prepared. Tears streaming down his face, he shoves the entire root into his mouth, frantically chewing it as he cries out from the blinding pain. The fox licks its lips, commenting that it thought he might taste different due to his unique scent. However, it remarks that he tastes just like other humans, or perhaps even worse because of the impurities in his veins. As his ragged breath slows, Seo Yunhyun realizes the herb is already working and the pain is subsiding. He pants, apologizing to the fox that his offering was not good enough. Satisfied with the offering, the fox declares that it will allow the group to stay in its territory for 7 days. It adds that they won't die from their injuries during this time, thanks to its divinity. With its promise made, the fox spirit departs, leaping powerfully into the sky and leaving a crater in the ground where it stood. His colleagues, led by Director Kim, rush to his side, calling out his name in alarm as they see him kneeling on the ground, clutching his grievous wound. Weakly, Seo Yunhyun tells them to go back inside the cave, assuring them that he will explain everything shortly. Back in the relative safety of the cave, Seo Yunhyun begins his fabricated explanation, claiming that he met the fox when he left the cave early that morning. He tells them that the fox informed him that they have been transported to a different world, the world of Murim. The revelation sends a shockwave through the group. Director Kim, a fan of martial arts novels, repeats the word Murim in stunned disbelief. He laughs nervously, saying he never would have imagined such a fantasy was real. Seo Yunhyun, clutching his bloody stump, reassures them that they will be safe for a week because of his sacrifice. But Director Kim anxiously asks what will happen after that week is over. With a grim expression, Seo Yunhyun breathes heavily and gives an ominous reply. "We need to give up something else." He then feigns exhaustion, cutting the conversation short by saying he's getting sleepy and needs to rest. He turns away from his stunned colleagues, leaving them to ponder his dark words. The night deepens and a strange, ringed purple moon hangs in the sky, watching over the forest and its new, terrified inhabitants. While Seo Yoonhyun pretends to be asleep, he listens as Section Chief Jiyeon coldly suggests that since Manager Seo already lost an arm, he won't last long anyway and should be the one to be sacrificed again. Seo Yoonhyun's eyes are wide open in the darkness. He hears another colleague, a man who appears to be Director Kim, not disagreeing. Instead, the man poses a chillingly practical question. Then who wants to give up their arm and leg in a week? Director Kim rationalizes the betrayal. He states that Manager Seo is useful because he provided them with food and shelter. The plan is to learn as much as they can from him over the next week, and then use him as the next sacrifice. Seo Yoonhyun's expression hardens as he realizes the true nature of the people he just saved. The camera focuses on Section Chief Jiyeon as he makes his cruel argument, pointing out that since Manager Seo has already lost an arm, he won't last long anyway. Jiyeon finishes his thought, declaring that is precisely why they should make him the sacrifice again. The scene cuts to Seo Yoonhyun, whose face is a mask of cold fury. The trust is broken, and his path forward is now one of grim determination against the very people he saved. From the bushes, Seo Yoonhyun listens to the other survivors. He thinks to himself, enraged about how now that he's debilitated, they want to chop off one of his limbs every week to give to the fox. As he thinks about how this is not exactly a pleasing situation, he quietly picks up a heavy stone. Jeon Myung-hoon continues to talk with the others, completely unaware of the murderous intent directed at him. With the stone in hand, Seo Yoonhyun glares ahead, confident that with the violence he has learned from being beaten for 50 years, he could easily kill a man like Jeon Myung-hoon with just one arm. Jeon Myung-hoon continues his discussion with the group, trying to figure out a plan for their survival, oblivious to the danger he is in. A glint appears in Seo Yoonhyun's eye as he contemplates the crucial question. Should he kill him right here and now? However, after a moment of thought, he sighs and drops the stone. He decides against it. He rationalizes his decision, thinking that if he acts too cruelly right now, it will cause issues with his relationship with Director Kim, a key figure in his future plans. Instead of violence, Seo Yoonhyun steps out and issues a cold threat. He tells Jeon Myung-hoon to shut his mouth if he doesn't want his ankles broken again, referencing a past punishment. Turning away, Seo Yoonhyun smirks. He sarcastically thinks to himself that they are good people. And it's just a confusing situation for everyone, hiding his true contempt. The scene transitions. The next day arrives, bringing the light of morning to the dense forest. The group encounters a giant two-headed snake. Seo Yoonhyun recalls from his past life that unlike the fox who ate his arm, this snake only requested a small amount of blood from Chief O. Thinking that a small amount of blood is a reasonable price, Chief O rolls up his sleeve and puts his arm forward, just as he had in the previous timeline. The snake bites down, but immediately spits out the blood in disgust, shrieking that it's the worst human blood it has ever had. While Chief O looks on, furious and insulted, Seo Yoonhyun thinks to himself that it's no wonder. The blood of a 21st century office worker, drenched in nicotine and cholesterol, would obviously taste gross. Later, Seo Yoonhyun approaches Jeon Myung-hoon, calling him by his full name and ordering him to come pick herbs. Myung-hoon is taken aback by the sudden formality, wondering why he's being addressed this way. Myung-hoon stammers that he's hungry. Seizing the opportunity, Seo Yoonhyun tells him to follow him, promising to teach him about edible fruits and herbs. A suspicious but desperate Myung-hoon asks if he's serious. Seo Yoonhyun leans in close and lies, claiming he plans to give his other arm to the fox next week. He says that if he dies, someone needs to know how to survive in the forest. Completely falling for the ruse, a relieved and grateful Jeon Myung-hoon thanks him profusely, believing Seo Yoonhyun is entrusting him with vital knowledge. Seo Yoonhyun allows himself a small, sinister smile. He thinks to himself, thanks. He knows the fox won't be coming back, and Myung-hoon will never get to use this knowledge. The lesson begins. Seo Yoonhyun shows his true colors, screaming at Jeon Myung-hoon with a terrifying expression. asking how many times he has to be told that he's picking the wrong fruit. A terrified Myung-hoon apologizes as Seo Yoon-hyun warns him that the fruit he just picked will get him killed. He is learning survival through fear. Panicked by the shouting, Jeon Myung-hoon drops all the fruit he was holding. He scrambles to pick them up off the ground while Seo Yoon-hyun watches on, impassive and cold. Finally reaching his limit, a completely exhausted Jeon Myung-hoon collapses to the ground. Panting for breath, he begs for a break, complaining that he's been digging nonstop to get the herbs. But Seo Yoon-hyun looks down on him without a shred of pity. He reveals the true motive for this torment, stating this is exactly how Myung-hoon used to punish him back at their company. Ignoring his pleas, he coldly tells him to get back to work, as they need to finish before dusk. While digging, Jeon Myung-hoon suddenly pulls a massive, man-shaped root from the ground. He cries out in shock, asking if it's ginseng. He holds the root in his hands, his face a mask of disbelief at its sheer size. He stammers, asking if it's naturally grown wild ginseng. Seo Yoon-hyun looks on calmly. He tells Myung-hoon that while it resembles ginseng, it's something different. A yellow bamboo root. In his mind, Seo Yoon-hyun explains that the ascension path is so saturated with energy that these roots, which are typically as small as a pinky finger, can grow to this incredible size here. He continues his internal monologue, noting that while the root is not of much use to powerful cultivators, it's an extremely precious medicine for martial artists to increase their chi. He thinks to himself that it should be a great help to director Kim. Myung-hoon is ecstatic to find more of the valuable roots. Seo Yoon-hyun tells him to take his shirt off and use it as a makeshift bag to carry them all. Seo Yoon-hyun looks to the horizon as the sky darkens and lightning flashes. Possessing knowledge of the future, he knows what is coming. It's almost time now, he thinks, and tells Myung-hoon it's time to head back. Suddenly, a cataclysmic explosion of light and energy tears across the sky, heralding the arrival of powerful beings. The immense spiritual pressure washes over the survivors. Jeon Myung-hoon, now shirtless, collapses to the ground, screaming in agony as he clutches his head. Chief-o is also brought to his knees, groaning in pain from the overwhelming force that is pressing down on them. The other survivors scream in pain and terror as shadowy figures descend from the sky. One of them shouts out in confusion, asking what is happening to them. 3 cultivators land before them. One in golden robes, Byuko, notes with surprise that they've found uncut talent. A second cultivator in black robes, Hyogwak, immediately snaps at him, claiming the talented mortals are hers. The terrified survivors can only stare in awe and fear. One stammers, asking who these powerful people are, as the cultivators continue to bicker amongst themselves. One of the cultivators scans the group with a disdainful air. He declares that only 3 of the survivors possess spiritual roots. The rest, he says, are just normal, worthless mortals. Byuko, the cultivator from the Golden Divine Heavenly Thunder sect, smirks as he gathers a crackling ball of golden lightning in his palm, preparing to test the potential of the survivors. He unleashes the lightning upon Section Chief Jeon. Jeon screams in agony as the golden energy courses through him, while the other survivors watch in horror. Byuko looks pleased, recognizing Jeon's potential as the legendary body of heavenly golden thunder. Before he can celebrate, Hyogwak of the Black Ghost Valley steps forward with her instrument, announcing that it's her turn. A female survivor, Deputy Manager Kang, grunts in pain as she becomes the next target, clutching her head as a new wave of energy assails her. Hyogwak strums her pipa, unleashing a torrent of dark, ghostly energy that engulfs the woman. A wide, manic grin spreads across Hyogwak's face. She exclaims in delight, having discovered a rare, ghostly yin transforming immortal root within the survivor. Finally, the third cultivator, a large, imposing man from the Azure Heaven Creation sect, makes his move, landing on the ground with a heavy thud that shakes the earth. He places his hand on Chief-o, whose body is instantly enveloped in a swirling blue aura. The cultivator marvels, exclaiming that he's found a unique holy body, as O trembles in fear and confusion. With a greedy smile, the Azure Heaven Creation sect's cultivator declares that he will take all 3 of the talented mortals as his disciples, proclaiming they all have the talent to change the entire world. He applies immense spiritual pressure, and Chief-o finds he can't breathe. The silent threat is clear. He feels as though he would die instantly if he dared to refuse the coercive offer. But the other cultivators object furiously. Hyogwak of the Black Ghost Valley tries to tempt the recruits by promising them access to every cultivation method and even immortality. Kicking off a fierce competition for the three talented mortals, the cultivators continue their sales pitches, promising the power to overturn the heavens, along with immense fame and wealth. While the cultivators squabble, one of the abandoned survivors desperately calls out, asking if they can at least lead them out of the forest, fearing they will all die if left behind. Bayuko pays the mortal no mind, casually opening a bottle of what appears to be a spiritual elixir. He scoffs, stating that mortals worry too much. He then looks over at Seo Yunhyun with disdain, questioning how someone with such a worthless body even made it to the ascension path. The immense pressure radiating from the cultivators continues to torment one of the survivors, who is still reeling on the ground. As he holds an unconscious Chief O, the cultivator from the Azure Heaven Creation sect notices Seo Yunhyun's severed arm. He correctly deduces that he must have lost it to the fox by offering it up himself. A flicker of respect appears in the cultivator's eyes. "You may be a mere mortal, but you've got guts," he says. As a reward for his bravery, he unleashes a wave of healing energy, miraculously regenerating Seo Yunhyun's arm on the spot. A stunned Yunhyun can only stammer, "Thank you." With their new disciples in tow, the cultivators begin to depart. As they ascend, one announces that they have captured all the beasts and monsters in the area, rendering the forest safe for the next 10 years. One of the remaining men, Director Kim, runs desperately after them, shouting for them to wait and explaining that the rest of them don't even know the way out of the forest. His pleas are met with silence as the cultivators vanish into the night sky. He shouts the names of the chosen ones who were taken away. Section Chief Jian, Chief O, and Deputy Manager Kang. Seo Yunhyun watches them leave with a grim look of resignation. It was just like what happened 50 years ago in his previous life. No matter how much they shouted, the powerful cultivators simply ignored them like insects and went on their way. He looks down at his perfectly restored hand. It was a bitter, familiar feeling of being abandoned, but he concedes to himself that at least his arm was healed this time. As a single shooting star streaks across the sky, the remaining survivors are left in utter despair. Director Kim curses, yelling into the empty forest and asking what they are supposed to do now. He then notices that the sky is now filled with a meteor shower. He looks up in wonder and confusion, asking what all the lights are and if something is happening in that direction. The scene shifts to the next day. The forest is dark, shrouded in a torrential downpour and flashes of lightning. Inside a cave, one of the female survivors, who appears to be Director Kim, lies on the ground, critically ill and coughing up blood. Another woman, Mina, rushes to Seo Yunhyun in a panic. She tells him that Director Kim is in a terrible condition and desperately asks if there is any medicinal herb they can use or what they should do. With his back turned to them, Seo Yunhyun gives a chillingly calm reply. He tells them to just wait a little longer, cryptically adding that someone might appear and heal her. The other survivors are left speechless, completely baffled by his strangely indifferent and confident response to the dire situation. Just then, the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps echoes from the entrance of the cave, silencing the group. A tall, silhouetted figure with what look like horns appears at the cave mouth. In a powerful voice, he speaks of mortals in the ascension path, suffering like ants caught in a competition between dragons. Startled and afraid, Director Kim shouts at the imposing figure, demanding to know who he is. The mysterious being steps into the light. A man with flowing, light blue hair and a calm smile reveals himself. He announces that he is the Sea Dragon King, Seo Hweol. Seo Yunhyun is shocked by the sudden turn of events, thinking to himself, "Control the storm." A mysterious man with light blue hair and horns appears. He introduces himself as someone who came to investigate the cause of the storm, and points to the unconscious Miss O, identifying her as the source. The man smiles, intrigued. He finds it strange that an ordinary woman with no trace of cultivation could wield such overwhelming and unconscious power. Seo Yunhyun confronts the strange man, his voice filled with frustration. He explains that they haven't been in this place for long. Yet powerful people like him keep appearing and taking away his companions. The horned man bursts into a hearty laugh, finding Seo Yoonhyun's predicament amusing. Still amused, he summarizes the situation from his perspective. That amongst Yoonhyun's colleagues, a few had extraordinary potential, and powerful cultivators appeared as if on cue to take them away. He then gestures to himself, pointing out that now he has conveniently appeared right in front of the unconscious woman, fitting the pattern perfectly. His expression turns serious and intimidating. With a close-up on his face, he asks Seo Yoonhyun, whom he calls a dear mortal, if he knows where they are. A grand celestial palace appears in the sky as he reveals their location. A place known as the Ascension Path. Floating in the air, he elaborates that this path is a key gateway leading to the upper realm. He continues his explanation, stating that in just a few months, a dimensional rift called the Ascension Gate will open right where they are. The scene shifts to a vision of countless powerful beings and enormous spiritual beasts gathering. The man explains that this event happens once every 1,000 years, drawing high-level cultivators who wish to ascend. With a close-up on a monstrous white tiger, he concludes his point, asking rhetorically if it isn't quite likely that cultivators like himself would appear near them. Seo Yoonhyun silently processes this information, while Director Kim, looking worried, points out that the other cultivators had claimed they were taking his colleagues to join their sects. Director Kim, still confused, voices his main concern. If those sects are ascending to the upper realm, how could his mortal colleagues possibly join them? The Sea Dragon Clan cultivator looks down, stating condescendingly that it might be hard for mortals like them to understand. He holds up a small, white magical bottle, explaining that there's a technique among cultivators used to shrink large objects and store them inside such tools. He suggests that the other sects have likely stored their new mortal disciples inside similar items, with the goal of ascending to the upper realm together when the gate opens. To demonstrate his point, he reveals that he too has packed one of his Sea Dragon Clan's undersea castles inside the very item he's holding, where 1,800 sea dragons currently lie dormant. Seo Yoonhyun and Director Kim are left utterly speechless and shocked by this incredible display of power. The cultivator's attention returns to the unconscious Miss O. He touches her head, musing about how peculiar and intriguing she is, and that she could become something extraordinary if she were to join the Sea Dragon Clan. Director Kim panics at the thought of losing another colleague. He shouts "W8 Miss O" as he lunges forward to stop the cultivator. Before he can get close, an immense pressure forces Director Kim to his knees, making him cry out in pain. He grits his teeth in agony, completely immobilized by the cultivator's overwhelming power, unable to do anything but watch. Ignoring the struggling Director Kim, the Sea Dragon Clan cultivator effortlessly picks up Miss O. He declares his intention to give her his blood and accept her as kin, framing it as the best option for everyone, and prepares to offer one last piece of advice. The Sea Dragon Clan cultivator glares, his eyes glowing ominously as he delivers his parting advice. Mortals shouldn't casually ask questions of high-level cultivators. As punishment for the question, both Director Kim and Seo Yoonhyun are crushed by an immense pressure, leaving them bleeding and groaning in pain on the ground. The cultivator turns to leave, stating that he only answered the question out of generosity. As he walks away, carrying their other colleague, he delivers a chilling warning that most cultivators would have killed them for the simple act of asking a question. Suddenly, the sky erupts with lightning as the cultivator summons his power. A massive celestial blue dragon appears in the stormy sky, and the cultivator departs, leaving the survivors behind. The scene shifts to a peaceful, sunlit forest. Miss O, now conscious, thinks in despair that all of her other colleagues have been kidnapped. She looks around, distraught and confused, trying to process the unbelievable events that have just transpired. Overwhelmed by the loss, Miss O breaks down into a fit of desperate, hysterical laughter, exclaiming how immortals and dragons have abducted her colleagues. Seeing her distress, Seo Yoonhyun walks over and gently places a comforting hand on her shoulder. Miss O looks up at him, her eyes pleading. She begs him, Manager Seo, not to be taken away as well. With tears in her eyes, she confesses her fear, believing that if he's taken too, she won't be able to survive alone in this strange forest. Seo Yoonhyun looks ahead with a grim expression, sensing a new danger. He gravely informs her, unfortunately, our time is up. His words send a jolt of fear through Miss O, who can only let out a cry of alarm. A strange pressure descends upon them. Miss O falls to her knees, crying out that something is coming, while Seo Yoonhyun notices Director Kim is also affected. The entire forest seems to react to the approaching presence, as flocks of birds flee the trees in a panic. Director Kim, his face pale with terror, confirms their fears, stammering, "It's here." An elderly cultivator appears, riding a large, mechanical lion-like beast. He looks down on them with disdain, wondering how mere mortals managed to get into the path to ascension. The elderly cultivator chuckles to himself, quickly deducing that they must have been caught in a spatial storm caused by the instability of the soon-to-open ascension gate. He proudly proclaims himself a genius for figuring it out. He floats down from his perch, his voice demanding as he asks which one of them emitted the massive wave of consciousness he had sensed earlier. With a greedy look in his eyes, the old man exclaims that the spiritual presence was so powerful he thought a sage from the upper realm had descended. His gaze locks onto Miss O and he asks, "Was it that girl?" Director Kim, terrified but resolute, stands protectively in front of Miss O and demands to know who the old man is. The elderly cultivator doesn't bother to answer, simply swatting Director Kim aside with a flick of his power, sending him flying through the air. Seo Yoonhyun cries out in horror, Director Kim, as his colleague is violently hurled through the air by the elderly cultivator. Watching his colleague hurtle towards the ground, Seo Yoonhyun dives without hesitation to intercept the fall, bracing himself as they crash and skid violently across the earth. Just before Director Kim hits the ground, Seo Yoonhyun dives and catches him, cushioning the impact with his own body. Director Kim weakly thanks him. Director Kim panics when he sees that Seo Yoonhyun's back is now a bloody mess from the impact. Despite the horrific injury, Yoonhyun grits his teeth and says he's okay. The elderly cultivator approaches Miss O and offers to take her in. He notes that while she has no spiritual root, he can awaken her power for her. Curious to see what would happen if her strange consciousness evolves. With tears in her eyes, Miss O looks back at her injured friends, unable to abandon them. Seeing her hesitation, the elderly cultivator becomes annoyed. He asks if she is still clinging to her worldly attachments, even after he has offered to take her as a disciple. To force her hand, he uses his power to lift both Seo Yoonhyun and Director Kim into the air, choking them. He declares that he will sever those ties himself. Desperate, Miss O begs him to stop, promising she will do anything he asks if he just spares them. The cultivator gives her an ultimatum. She must forget all her worldly ties. Defeated, she whispers that she understands. Despite her promise, the cultivator simply drops the two men to the ground. He reasons that if he leaves them here, she'll remain attached. Gathering dark energy in his hand, he decides to forcefully send them away to a random mortal nation instead. A golden dimensional rift opens behind Seo Yoonhyun and Director Kim. The cultivator explains that they will be randomly scattered, and not even he knows where they'll land. The rift becomes a swirling vortex, pulling them in. As Director Kim screams in terror, Seo Yoonhyun makes a last-ditch effort, lunging to grab some valuable-looking herbs before he's completely sucked in. As the portal closes, Miss O can only cry out Yoonhyun's name in despair, watching her last companions disappear. The scene fades to black, filled with the bustling sounds of a marketplace. Down on the floor of a dusty, run-down room, Seo Yoonhyun and Director Kim lie unconscious. Seo Yoonhyun is the first to stir, his eyes slowly opening as he regains consciousness. He slowly sits up, clutching his head and looking out of a doorway at an ancient-style city street, wondering where on earth he is. Looking out at the bustling marketplace, Seo Yoonhyun thinks to himself that he'd never fallen into a place like this in his previous life. A nearby merchant gives him a strange look. He stands up and takes a step, realizing the cultivator wasn't lying about their destination being random. Yet as he walks, the path feels strangely familiar to him. A wave of realization washes over his face as he shields his eyes from the sun. With dawning comprehension, he murmurs, "This is the place I once lived in." Staring up at a massive, iconic pagoda, his back still bleeding, the full truth hits him. He has returned to a place from his past, the capital of Yongguo, Seokyeong City. Following the chaotic events of the dimensional rift, the scene opens on a bustling, unfamiliar city, built in the style of ancient China. This is the world of Murim, where the laws of modern Earth no longer apply. In a dark, dirty alleyway, Director Kim Young-hoon's voice echoes his despair and confusion. Having been abandoned by the cultivators, he can't process the sudden shift in their reality. Slumped against a stone wall, both Kim Young-hoon and Seo Yoon-hyun look defeated. Director Kim voices his disbelief, wishing it was all just a nightmare. Director Kim lets out a sigh of relief, thankful that at least they weren't taken away by the monstrous cultivators who brought them here. Seo Yoon-hyun, however, remains calm on the surface. His composed expression hides the complex thoughts of a man who has lived this life before. His mind flashes back. Yoon-hyun knows that even though he has regressed in his past life, he was nothing more than a powerless herb gatherer. This time, things have to be different. Bringing him back to the present, Kim Young-hoon suggests they can't stay in the alley forever. Yoon-hyun agrees, and they decide to step out into the unknown city. The city is vast and teeming with life. As they walk through the streets, they immediately draw attention, with locals whispering and pointing at the strange newcomers. Director Kim notices the stares and whispers, asking Yoon-hyun what the locals are saying. He guesses that they must be speaking Chinese. Yoon-hyun explains that the people are commenting on how funny their modern clothes look. The realization shocks Director Kim. Putting on a reassuring smile, Yoon-hyun lies, claiming he knows a bit of Chinese. He turns, revealing the bloodstains on his back from the earlier ordeal. Completely oblivious to the lie, Director Kim expresses his relief, impressed by Yoon-hyun's supposed knowledge and preparedness. In his mind, however, Yoon-hyun admits the truth. He lied. The language here is entirely different from Chinese, even if some written characters look similar. He recalls the painful memory from his past life, having to endure 2 long months of mockery from beggars just to learn the very basics of this world's language. But now, thanks to his regression, there's no need for that humiliation. Yoon-hyun suggests they get some new clothes, but Director Kim worries if their Earth money will even be accepted here. Yoon-hyun's plan is already in motion. Instead of a clothing store, he leads them to a large, traditional medicine hall. Inside, the old shopkeeper is beside himself with excitement. He holds up the herb Yoon-hyun provided, exclaiming in disbelief that they're willing to sell such a precious item. Yoon-hyun calmly informs the bowing shopkeeper that the yellow bamboo roots are at least 800 years old and should fetch a price of 15 silver ingots. As he watches the transaction, Yoon-hyun gulps. The sheer amount is staggering. He thinks to himself that he never possessed such wealth in his entire past life. Composing himself, Yoon-hyun clears his throat and urges the overjoyed shopkeeper to hurry with the payment. The old man quickly obliges. Their newfound wealth is immediately put to use. Director Kim stares in astonishment at a large, beautiful house and asks if this is really where they're going to live. Now dressed in proper, local attire, Yoon-hyun confirms it is their new home. He promises to teach Director Kim the language, earning a heartfelt thanks from the older man. But Yoon-hyun's thoughts reveal a harsh reality. He made it seem easy. But after bribing officials for identity plaques and purchasing the house, they only have a single silver ingot left. The capital is an expensive place to live. As Yoon-hyun turns to walk through their new courtyard, Director Kim's expression shifts from relief to concern as he notices the large, dried bloodstains covering Yoon-hyun's back. In an effort to build a new relationship in this new world, Director Kim suggests they drop the formalities. He asks to call Yoon-hyun by his name, to which Yoon-hyun agrees. Director Kim smiles, a sense of camaraderie forming between the two survivors. He drops the formal title, thanking Seo Yoon-hyun by his name for the first time. As night falls, the two settle into their new, quiet life. But while things seem peaceful, Yoon-hyun's mind is already working on their next move. Later that evening, by the light of an oil lamp, Yoon-hyun begins to lay out their situation, explaining that their newfound wealth came entirely from selling those precious herbs. He points out the flaw in their current success. The herbs are a finite resource. Once they run out, so does their income. They need a sustainable way to make money. Kim Young-hoon, ever the practical manager, suggests they use the money from selling the rest of the herbs to start a proper business. Yoon-hyun internally agrees that this is a viable option. With the money and Director Kim's skills, they could certainly make a comfortable living. But for a man who has been given a second chance at life, just making a living isn't enough. Having regressed, Yoonhyun decides it's time to dream bigger. And so, his grand plan begins to form. He looks at his companion and recalls a crucial fact from his past life. Director Kim Young-hoon is a martial arts genius. Yoonhyun remembers how, in his previous timeline, Kim had become a martial master in just a few months, all from reading cheap, third-rate manuals he found on the street. From there, once he gained access to more advanced techniques, he quickly rose to become one of the most powerful and respected martial artists in the entire Jeonghu. A cunning glint appears in Yoonhyun's eyes. If Kim could achieve so much with so little, what could he become if he were to learn top-tier martial arts from the very beginning? Yoonhyun envisions the possibilities. He could engineer the rise of the greatest swordsman the Jeonghu has ever seen, accelerating his destiny by at least 30 years. With this new goal in mind, Yoonhyun begins to subtly manipulate his friend. He starts by reminding Kim that they are in Murim, a world governed by martial arts. He plants a seed of fear, questioning what they would do if local gangs came after their business. He frames it as a simple necessity. Shouldn't they learn to defend themselves? Just as he predicted, Kim's eyes light up at the mere mention of martial arts. However, his excitement is quickly tempered by a practical concern. Sects don't teach their arts to outsiders. How could they possibly learn? Yoonhyun smirks internally. He knew that as a huge fan of Murim novels, director Kim wouldn't be able to resist the idea. The bait was perfectly placed. Now that he has Kim's attention, Yoonhyun begins to reveal the knowledge from his past life. He explains that there are 7 famous sects in the city, divided into the orthodox 4 stars and the unorthodox 3 demons. He details the orthodox sects: the demon-slaying sect, masters of sword and blade; the self-binding temple, a Buddhist sect; the suppressing birdhouse, which trades in information; and the ancient 7 mysteries sect, which teaches all forms of martial arts. On the other hand, he explains, there isn't much information on the unorthodox 3 demons, other than whispers of their skill in stealth, sorcery, and other illicit activities. Having laid out all the options, Yoonhyun asks his friend which sect he finds most appealing. Without a moment's hesitation, the Murim novel fanboy in Kim enthusiastically chooses the demon-slaying sect. He passionately exclaims that a true martial artist must wield a sword, and a real man must learn the art of the blade. Yoonhyun's eyes narrow. It was the perfect choice, a choice befitting the man who, in another life, was destined to become the greatest swordsman. Kim's excitement fades as a question dawns on him. How does Yoonhyun know all of this? Yoonhyun brushes it off with a casual lie, claiming he simply overheard some martial artists talking earlier. 3 months later, their plan is put into action. Seo Yoonhyun and Kim Young-hoon arrive at the impressive gates of the demon-slaying sect, where they are promptly stopped by a guard questioning their presence. With a large, heavy box strapped to his back, Yoonhyun politely makes his case. He introduces Kim as his older brother and declares that they, drawn by the sect's great fame, have come with the humble wish to learn its martial arts. The guard looks them up and down with a skeptical expression, not impressed by their plea. Another, more portly man dismisses them outright, noting that while they look like they have money, director Kim is far too old to begin learning martial arts. But Yoonhyun is prepared. With a charming smile, he offers a small bribe, asking if they can at least speak to someone of a higher status. Even simple self-defense techniques would be enough, he pleads. The bribe works, granting them access to the vast and impressive inner grounds of the demon-slaying sect. They are brought before a sect elder, who asks them to confirm that they wish to learn martial arts for self-defense. Yoonhyun confirms their wish with a grin, presenting his main argument. The chest full of silver ingots, the entire payment for the 800-year-old yellow bamboo root. The elder clears his throat, his eyes gleaming at the sight of the silver. He agrees to let them join, but only as external disciples. He then adds 2 conditions. There will be no special treatment for this donation, and they will only accept one of the 2. Director Kim is incensed, realizing all that money, the price of a priceless herb, is buying them so little. Feeling like they're being scammed, Director Kim begins to lose his temper, shouting, "What? Are you ripping us?" Oh. Before Kim can ruin the negotiation, Yoonhyun swiftly cuts him off, grabbing his arm and bowing. He graciously accepts the elder's terms, declaring that his brother will be the one learning. With the deal concluded, the elder wordlessly takes the chest of silver and departs, instructing them to head to the gathering place for external disciples. Kim immediately confronts Yoonhyun, feeling immense guilt. What's the use if only he learns martial arts? He complains that he would have chosen a different sect if he knew it would be so expensive. Yoonhyun laughs it off, telling Kim not to worry. He claims he was never good at sports anyway and will focus on setting up a business to support him. All Kim needs to do is focus on learning martial arts. Moved by Yoonhyun's apparent self-sacrifice, Director Kim is left speechless, stammering that he will try his best. But doubts still linger. He worries that because of his age, he won't be able to accomplish much, no matter how hard he tries. Yoonhyun gives him one last push of encouragement, telling him to believe in himself. He knows better than anyone what Director Kim is truly capable of. Looking out over the vast sect grounds, Kim can only say a quiet thanks as he accepts his new path. 7 months later. At a competition being held within the sect, a shocking event is about to unfold. An elder of the demon-slaying sect watches from his seat, his knuckles white as he grips the armrest in disbelief and fury. To master a martial art, one must not only train their body, but also understand the true meaning behind the techniques. In this world, a third-rate warrior who grasps the essence of a martial art can elevate themselves to the second-rate by making that understanding their own. But to advance beyond that requires double the effort and understanding. The disciples of the sect shout angrily at an outsider who seems to defy this rule. However, some individuals are born with such immense talent that they seem to mock these established levels, speeding through multiple stages of mastery at once. The demon-slaying sect, the great sect of Seokyeong City, is a place renowned for being full of such talented martial artists. Yet an outsider has appeared, effortlessly defeating the direct disciples of this very sect, leaving them beaten on the ground. This man, Director Kim, became a first-rate warrior in a mere 7 months, completely mastering the absolute dragon saber technique of the demon-slaying sect. One of the sect elders fumes with rage. Reaching the first-rate level should be the culmination of efforts from many skilled artists, not the achievement of a single outsider in half a year. To the elder, this is a deep humiliation. It seems as though their sect's long-standing tradition has been brought to its knees by one man. His fury echoes as he gives the order to the entire sect. Capture him now. Warriors from the sect mobilize, surrounding the buildings as they begin their hunt for the outsider, Director Kim. Watching the events unfold, Yoonhyun reflects on the situation. Because an outsider gained skills befitting a sect elder, the entire sect has been thrown into chaos within just 7 months. In such a ridiculous situation, Director Kim was suspected of being a spy from another sect and was subsequently imprisoned in his quarters. The scene shifts to the present, where Yoonhyun finds himself in a similar predicament. He scratches his head in confusion, wondering why he was arrested at the market and considered a suspect when he doesn't even know martial arts. Yoonhyun sits down for tea with Director Kim, who is unfazed by his imprisonment and continues to practice his sword forms. Yoonhyun asks, "Aren't you worried, Director?" To which Kim cheerfully replies, "Haha, about what?" Yoonhyun elaborates about them suspecting you as a spy. As they speak, figures lurk behind the door, listening in. Yoonhyun adds that in martial arts novels, spies typically have their chi core destroyed or their chi flow cut off. Director Kim pauses his training, his sharp blade gleaming as he calmly agrees, "That's true." But he doesn't seem worried at all. Instead, he grins with excitement, stating that for some reason, he feels he's approaching the next wall and can soon advance to the next stage. Yoonhyun is stunned by this revelation. He can only think to himself, what a monster. It hasn't been long since Kim became a first-rate martial artist, and he's already nearing the next stage. Martial Peak. The level of Martial Peak is a realm inhabited by the great sect leaders and elders. In Yangguo, they are known as absolute masters, and there are only about 1,000 of them in the entire nation. Beyond that, the martial arts world doesn't mention any higher stage. Essentially, Martial Peak is considered the final and ultimate stage one can attain through the learning of martial arts. Yoonhyun smirks, realizing his initial assumptions were wrong. At this rate, the birth of the greatest swordsman in the world won't be sped up by 30 years, but by a full 40 years. A time skip takes us 7 days into the future. Inside his room, Director Kim is deep in meditation. A powerful blue aura envelops him as 3 ethereal lotuses, a sign of immense inner energy, manifest before him. This phenomenon is known as 3 flowers at the summit, a clear sign of a massive breakthrough. He slowly exhales, releasing a plume of pure, blue energy, signifying the successful completion of his advancement. Witnessing the phenomenon, Yoonhyun is in complete shock. He recognizes the display instantly, the flower of chi that only appears to peak martial artists. 3 flowers gather at the summit. Director Kim rises to his feet, a powerful blue aura swirling around him. He can feel the surge of new power. "I've crossed the barrier," he declares with confidence. "I'm not so scared of the demon-slaying sect leader anymore." Yoonhyun can only say, "Wow." He is genuinely stunned, admitting with a smile, "Your talent far exceeds my imagination." Director Kim, holding his sword, chuckles, admitting he's also impressed by himself. He never knew he had such talent, and muses that perhaps this latent ability was why he always loved reading martial arts novels as a kid. Their moment is abruptly interrupted by the heavy footsteps of an approaching group. An official announcement is about to be made, addressed to Young-hoon and his comrade. A sect elder, flanked by other disciples, unrolls a scroll and bellows, "We have orders from the sect leader to destroy the chi core of the spy who dared to steal the martial arts of the demon-slaying sect." Director Kim listens to the proclamation with a calm, almost dismissive expression on his face. The room is now surrounded by warriors. Yoonhyun frantically holds up his hands, trying to de-escalate the situation. "I said I wasn't a spy, we were just..." The elder cuts him off with a swift backhand, shouting silence. He accuses them of speaking in a code-like language, referring to their native Korean, and orders his men to restrain them. As the warriors attack, Director Kim moves in a blur. Before the first attacker can even land a blow, Kim has already intercepted his strike and disarmed him. The disarmed disciple cries out in agony, his hand bleeding from the lightning-fast counterattack. Director Kim calmly holds the captured sword, a look of disappointment on his face as he looks at the blade. "This was my first sect," he says with a sigh, hinting at his disillusionment. Enraged by the display, another, larger disciple roars, "How dare you," and lunges forward to attack. With his newfound power, Director Kim moves like the wind. He effortlessly weaves through the attackers, disarming and disabling them with precise strikes. His movements too fast for them to counter. The remaining disciples stumble back in terror. They realize they are no match for him. "Shit, it's a peak-level martial artist." "Run," one of them shouts, while another yells to inform the sect leader. With the room now cleared of conscious opponents, Director Kim turns to Yoonhyun. "Yoonhyun, I intend to visit other sects and train. What will you do?" Wiping the blood from his nose, Yoonhyun looks up with determination. "I will accompany you." He even suggests their next target, the acclaimed unorthodox sect, the dragon-fighting stronghold. Director Kim laughs heartily. "Ha ha ha, all right. Let's meet there." As they depart, Yoonhyun resolves to himself that he will find a way to end the pursuit from the demon-slaying sect's elders and leader. Sometime later, Director Kim stands triumphantly atop a rugged cliff, his sword stained with blood. He looks down and calls out with a laugh, "Ho ho, Yoonhyun, what took you so long?" Yoonhyun is still struggling to climb the steep cliff face, huffing and puffing with exhaustion. He forces a smile and replies, "Haha, you're just too fast, Director." As he climbs, Yoonhyun reflects on how much Director Kim has changed. He used to call out Yoonhyun's use of violence, but now he wields it himself without hesitation. He grimly concludes, "This world changes us into something else." He looks at a distant temple, nestled in the mountains, and thinks to himself how great it would be if they could return. Not to this brutal martial arts world, but to the simple, everyday life they once knew on Earth. The thought continues to weigh on him as he struggles up the cliff. "If I were to regress, I wish I could just return to Earth." Letting out a sigh of resignation, he traverses a narrow rock bridge, accepting their new reality. It can't be helped, he thinks. Now that we're here, we need to do what we can. With that resolution, their journey to conquer the martial world began. following through on their plan. Director Kim's first move after leaving the demon-slaying sect was to take over the dragon-fighting stronghold, establishing a new base of power. The montage of Director Kim's rise continues. For the next 2 years, he toured every region of the land of Yangnuo, challenging and defeating various sects one by one. In the 3rd year of his journey, he finally achieved his goal of destroying the emblems of every sect, a symbolic act of ultimate victory over all of them. With no rivals left, he became known far and wide as the greatest martial artist under the heavens. He used this unparalleled fame to unite the disparate sects, forming the Martial Alliance. Another 7 years pass. Yoonhyun narrates that in this time, he and Director Kim became as close as brothers, their bond transcending the large gap in their ages. Director Kim, now the Alliance leader, even created a martial art specifically suited for Yoonhyun, gifting him a book titled The Severing Mountain Sword. Kim explains that he named it with the hope that Yoonhyun would inherit a will so powerful it could even cut down mountains, assuring him that mastering this sword art would lead him to martial peak. Yoonhyun was ecstatic. Both the sword art and the accompanying dragon vein chi method were true first-rate martial arts, a world apart from any second or third-rate techniques he had encountered. But as Yoonhyun recalls, there was a problem. A big one. The scene flashes to his training, where he is easily knocked to the ground. Director Kim stands over him, holding a wooden training sword with a look of profound disappointment. But Yoonhyun, you realize. The unspoken end to that sentence was clear. Yoonhyun claws at his head in anguish as he faces the devastating truth. He has no talent. His talent for martial arts was absolutely terrible. He reflects on the cruel irony. The greatest martial artist under the heavens had personally created a martial art just for him. And yet, after an entire year of dedicated one-on-one training, he barely made it to the third-rate level. Facing his master, Yoonhyun puts on a brave face, sighing that it can't be helped. He tries to find a silver lining, admitting to himself that at least he seems to have some talent in medicine. He looks up at the grand pagoda of the Martial Alliance headquarters, trying to console himself with the thought that people are simply talented in different areas. The story jumps forward again. One day, a full decade after they arrived in this world, Yoonhyun peeks through a door and witnesses something truly unbelievable. Inside, an old master is meditating, his body levitating as he's surrounded by an immense aura of pure blue chi and 9 swirling energy orbs. Yoonhyun's eyes widen in disbelief. He recognizes the phenomenon from ancient texts, a level he'd only heard of in legends. The state known as 5 energies converge to the origin. The old master's eyes flash with power as he lets out a silent scream, his body glowing as he pushes through the final stage of his legendary breakthrough. He channels the immense power, and a massive column of golden energy erupts from his body, radiating outwards. The shockwave of energy is so immense that it blows Yoonhyun off his feet. Inside the room, the golden light envelops another person who was present, lifting him into the air. As the blinding light subsides, Yoonhyun looks up in shock at the figure now floating in the center of the room. He recognizes him, Young Hoon. A confident voice laughs. Hahaha, Yoonhyun, the man who was once Young Hoon now has long, flowing hair and a powerful, glowing physique. He sits up, showing off a perfectly sculpted body crackling with energy, and asks with a grin, "What has you so surprised?" Yoonhyun had just witnessed a miraculous, body-altering transformation. Skeletal restructuring. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for more awesome stories.